Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the MetaCafe. Grab your cup of coffee or your tea, sit back, and let's chat about the astrology, human design, and whatever else comes up for the week or for the day. I mean, the week too, right? We have all different kinds of things that we could be talking about today. I woke up this morning somewhere a little bit after 3 a.m. and I haven't been to sleep since. Maybe just sort of dozed here or dozed there, but I had to get up early. And, I don't know how it is that the generation that was born with the sun or with Pluto at gate 28 does it, because it keeps waking me up and causing me to sit and have to think about all of these things, about purposelessness, about, about different fears. And I woke up and, remember gate 28 is where the sun is sitting until tomorrow, or was it hopefully it moves out today. That would be super swell. I don't know where my little book is, but the energy of gate 28 is really about purposelessness, and it's a fear. It's part of that, for sort of fear field that we've been working with for the last several months, actually. And God, I'll be so glad at the end of October and into the first week in November, we finally clear the fear field and we move on, thankfully. And, maybe things can feel a little different to us. I am excited for that, because I don't know, like you guys that are in your 30s, mid 30s right now, I'm pretty sure have gate 28 prominent in your chart. So your life is about this, being woken up and worried about God knows what. This morning, I was worried about this one stupid little thing. I had to get up early this morning because I needed to take my husband to work, because later I get my golden locks chopped and I needed the car to go to Bellingham to do that. So I woke up worrying about how was I going to get all of that done and get home and back here in time to do this with you all. So I was thinking, oh, I need to get up now and I need to create and do. And I mean, literally craziness, right? Because my husband is asleep. And my desk is right here in my room. I couldn't really do anything. So I'm like, okay, go back to sleep. But I couldn't do it. Finally, at 5:30, I went, I can't sleep anymore. I'm getting up. And luckily my husband's alarm had already rung, so he was getting up. But it's craziness right now. So if you're finding yourself in this rut of waking up or not being able to go to sleep because of this chatter that's going on about fears or things you're worried about or things you have to do, it's like I have this running to-do list almost going on in my head. You're not alone. It is a part of the energies that are running right now. And luckily that, we are going to pull out of that here very soon. And I wish I knew. Here it is. Let's take a look. I want to say it's tomorrow. Maybe it's today. That would be so much better. It is tomorrow. We pull out of the gate 28 and we find ourselves landing at gate 44. Now, gate 44 is still a fear gate. It's sitting on the spleen center in your human design. And the spleen is the center for time, intuition, and health, but it's also the gate or the center that we think of in survival. It is where all of the gates on the spleen double as fear gates, and those fear gates can turn into paralysis points in your life. And the paralysis point at 28, which we've been dealing with all week, from, let's say, the 25th of October, so last Thursday, all the way through today, is this fear that there's really no purpose or meaning to life. And so we're doing things to try to feel alive. And it can trick us into, constantly thinking, and think about how far away the spleen really is from the mind. And so there's a lot that's going on in our mind related to the triggers that are going on in survival mode. And I'm telling you, it's been kind of crazy. I don't have gate 28 I have it in my human design, but there's no planet sitting at it. So a planet sitting at it has been triggering all of this for me. So some of you may find yourself in that position. So if you do, it's okay. Just let it roll off. We are done with that gate here as of tomorrow. and we get to move into 44. Now, 44 is interesting in its own right because it is the gate. Yesterday, remember, we had a conversation about conservatism and the idea of being conservative. And is it possible for us to write a new definition about what that means for all of us so that we, I was, this was a really interesting experience this morning because I'm not usually listening to the radio or to the television in the morning. I just don't like to, and I'm not in the car driving anywhere usually, so I'm not listening. Well, this morning I was listening to the radio, and right now we have this election coming up next week. So as you can imagine, every gosh darn commercial is about, vote this, vote that, don't vote that, vote, fear, fear, fear. And this younger woman was talking, and I tuned in too late to know what it was she was talking about. So right down the line, she is going through all of these different things. And I'm like, I could sign up for that. I can validate that. I could be okay with that. And then she gets down to the end of the chat and she said, if you, agree with these things, then you need to be voting Republican. I nearly had a conniption fit. Because in my mind, and not just in my mind, in the world, the Republican Party represents conservatism. And when you look up conservatism as a political statement in this country, the one thing that keeps standing out is the religious leaning, right? The dogma, the doctrine of Christianity that they would like everybody to conform to. They've taken that very energy of conservatism, which I agree in wholeheartedness about conservatism. But then when you apply it to everybody has to believe this way and they want conformity, they've bastardized the idea, the concept of conservatism. And so I thought, it was really interesting to see that reaction in myself. Right. That I was like, oh, yeah. And that's great. And yeah, you're speaking my language. She's talking about healing division and being fiscally conservative. And she didn't use the word conservative. I can't remember fiscally responsible. And I'm thinking, oh, yeah. And then when she got to the fact that was the Republican Party, vote Republican, then I went, bleh. Because there's so much of that connection to what I don't agree with, which is making social policy and out of an ancient belief system, a Bible, or a belief system based on, anything but love, right? I think Christianity sometimes is the vengeful God kind of thing. Not all Christianity, so don't start, sending me hate mail. But certainly, the way that the Republican Party or the conservatives have used the power of the Republican pulpit is about in restricting rights, in trying to keep the LGBTQ, I'm not even sure I said that right, community from being able to be existing in a healthy way, to, bar marriages. And, I said to my husband, I go, what's next? Are they going to try to bar interracial marriages? I mean, come on. I mean, if they could, they would. And that's the whole thing that, we are struggling against is this one component of that particular belief system or that party affiliation that takes it to the nth degree. Yet, if we could build something, here's my whole point of bringing this up. If we could build something on these common ground beliefs that we have, then we could create something different, and it wouldn't be Republican or Democrat, right? It would be a people's party, right? The People's Party. Let's call it the People's Party. The love party. I don't care what we call it, but we could create something else. So when we get to the sun in gate 44 tomorrow, what we have is this ability to see clearly into the values that we have and that we're holding from the past, right? And be able to marry that to the now, to be able to, see that our society has changed, that our concept of love has changed, and that it's more inclusive. And if we could create our political parties, God help me, to be more in alignment with that, taking the best from both and bringing them together, whoa, what a difference the world would be. And that's the gift in the 44th gene key is teamwork. right? Teamwork. How could we build a bigger, better team where we are working together for the good of all and not just for, the beliefs that, one party has that are narrow. And I'm not saying that their beliefs are wrong. Have your beliefs, but don't make it social policy, right? Don't make it social policy, because after all, everything in this country was built on freedom. So interesting, right? Let's say how everybody's doing out here this morning. Good morning, Anne. She says in the UK, there is a women's equality party. Yeah, sign me up. And Mimi, good morning. Spin doctors. Yes, spin doctors. But when I listen, and this is a big when, because I try not to listen to the rhetoric and to all the, the baloney. I listen for the nuggets of truth. I listen for the nuggets of commonality. And that's what I'm looking for, because I want to magnify that, right? I want that to be what we can create and not the divisional type things. Good morning, Suzanne. Good morning, Tina. And hubby is traveling. Wi-Fi is mine. I love it. Good morning, Stephanie. Kristen, good morning. Good morning, Linda. Good morning, Cindy. Jacqueline Tyler, good morning to you. And Lynn Goldberg, good morning. And I missed somebody because I thought I saw somebody else say good morning here. Vanita, I thought I saw you. There you are. Good morning. All right. So the gate 44 takes us into this new territory, but it isn't the only thing taking us into new territory, as not this week, but next week after the election, Jupiter is going to be making a change. And as we look at the astrology of today, what the stars are doing today, we see that today the planet Mercury has moved out of Scorpio and into the sign of Sagittarius. And he's preparing for his retrograde station, but he will make it literally all the way to the 29th degree of Sagittarius before he turns around and goes backwards. What do I always say about Mercury? When he moves in ahead of a large planet, he's like the seed planter. He's planting the seeds for what it is to come. And Jupiter being the next planet, the next big planet that moves into the sign of Sagittarius, what is it that we can expect from that planet as we're walking ahead through to the next year? Because Jupiter spends an entire year in Sagittarius. Mercury's going to dance forward to the end of the sign, dance backwards, and then go back forward again between now and December. What did I say? 24th, I think it is, when Mercury leaves the shadow of the retro shade, as Suzanne calls it. So what is it that we can see in our world of the seeds that are being planted? And what can we expect from Jupiter then over the course of the next year? And that's where I want to take you today in preparation. But in preparation for that, we also have to look a little bit backwards. We want to look backwards and see what has Jupiter been bringing us, the lessons, the ahas, the growth and expansion that we've experienced while Jupiter's been in the sign of Scorpio. Because, we're not out of Scorpio yet. Mercury's left Scorpio. And oh, by the way, Venus leaves Scorpio tomorrow morning as it heads backwards into Libra. Hallelujah. So we have one more body leaving Scorpio, giving us some relief from digging into those dark places, into this deep psychology, into the underworld, right? I think we've been in that underworld for a long time now, and I'm ready to move on. I don't know about you guys, but I'm ready to move on. And we are getting that opportunity, but we're not done with it yet. So we need to do some closing work on Jupiter's transit through Scorpio. And then I'm going to take you fast forward, and we're going to look at Jupiter and Sagittarius. So first of all, what does Jupiter mean for all of us? Because that's the other thing we've got to really understand, is what is it about? Well, you almost always hear me talk about Jupiter in terms of growth and expansion. And that growth and expansion happens through knowledge, the attaining of more and more knowledge, or learning, right? The idea that we can expand our horizons by learning more. It is also spiritual knowledge and spiritual wisdom. when we look at Jupiter in, say, the 12th house in someone's chart, and I know a few of you out there have that, it is someone who is primed for spiritual growth in this life, that deep within them is a spiritual master that's being uncovered piece by piece, layer by layer, as they work on self-reflection. So Jupiter really is that evolution of consciousness, and it doesn't straight line grow or horizontally grow. It doesn't do the growth curves that we normally think of. Jupiter is more of a spiral. And I want all of us to think of growth anyway as a spiral, no matter what kind of growth, because you're always, even though we look often at the orbits of these planets, and everything that we're talking about right now happened 12 years ago, and everything that will happen happened 12 years ago as well. So we have 2005, 2006, perhaps that was the last time that Jupiter spent a year in Scorpio. And then 2006, 2007, 19 minus 12. Yeah, 2006, 2007 for the last time that Jupiter was in Sagittarius. So we're kind of perched at this cusp where we can look backwards. What have we learned? What have we learned in this past year? But also, what have we learned in this past year that also relates to 12 years ago? And then looking forward, what is it that happened 12 years ago from this moment in time that is where we can look to our next level of growth and expansion? So, it's interesting because often the planet Jupiter is represented as the god Janus or Janus, who is the two-headed god. One head looking to the past, one head looking to the future. How extraordinary, right? That we get this opportunity right now to be able to do that. And again, I say, I don't make this stuff up. The month January is named after the god Janus. It's also Jupiter. And it is the time of the year where we think about, we're looking backwards over the year to see what we've accomplished. And we're also looking forward into the new year to see where do we want to pick up and go, right? So right now, dealing with Jupiter, we have that same possibility. Now, Jupiter is the planet that we also think of that brings us luck and is what we call in astrology the greater benefic. Benefic meaning beneficial and brings us good things, is a planet that we think of in terms of optimism, generosity, abundance, flow, and literally Jupiter as a planet rules the sign of Sagittarius that it's about to go into. And as we've talked about before, when a planet moves into a sign it rules, it has way more power and influence over the daily affairs of us mere mortals here on the planet Earth. So we have this really interesting period of time coming up where growth and expansion and optimism and forward thinking are all favored. But before we go there and get all giddy with, yay, all these fun things are going to happen, what does Jupiter first demand? He takes on a bit of a Saturn sort of personality for a short term in exposing the parts that you're challenged by. So, I'll give you an example. A couple of years ago, I think it was a couple of years ago, I had Jupiter running through my second house. And I want to see what is on my second house, Leo. So it was definitely a few years back. And I thought, yes, how exciting. I'm going to have money and I'm going to have opportunities and I'm going to have growth and yeah. But what grew instead were expenses, right? I didn't expect that. I didn't expect expenses to grow. Obviously more money was coming in as well, but the expense part is what got to me. And that's a part of the experience that we have with Jupiter. Sometimes along with that really good stuff comes the unexpected, the part that you might be challenged with. And so be aware of that as we start to move forward here. So what has it meant for us to have Jupiter in Scorpio? What have we learned over this past year. The number one thing on my list that we've learned this last year, to live your passions. Scorpio, if nothing else, is a sign of passion. And if you are able to align yourself with what you're passionate about, then Jupiter's benefits have been unfolding for you over the course of the year. It has also been a time that I'm going to just take a moment here to write a little note on my notes, because it has also been a time of us cutting out the fluff, right? All the fluff around what we do, and to focus on what's really meaningful and what really matters for us in the work that we do. So, for example, if you've had your own business through this time, you may have really been having to focus in on what's important, what really makes your business tick. How do you really want to show up in your business? And everything that doesn't work in your business has been so much fluff. It doesn't work, and that should be your key, that isn't what you should be focusing on, right? And the word I just wrote down here on my little list is conservative, right? Conservation, cutting out the fluff and getting back to the basics. What can you steward and grow that is meaningful for you personally? It's going to be different for everybody, because everybody has the planet Jupiter and Scorpio sitting someplace different. There's 12 opportunities for you to have Jupiter and Scorpio. So where is it at? That is where you're cutting the fluff, right? And focusing on the heart of something. And there's been also a sort of rawness or edginess to the world while Jupiter has been in the sign of Scorpio, to our interactions with one another, as we're less focused on what's polite and what's socially acceptable, in favor of getting to the bottom of what it is we want to say. It has an edge of bluntness to it, but not blunt in the way that Sagittarius can be, but, a little shorter than that, like almost an edge of sort of like non-caring about whatever it is that doesn't matter to the person that has, this conversation going. There's been a focus for us on getting to the bottom of our values, and that has needed to be has had to be undertaken with decisiveness. And there's an intensity in the interactions that we've had with one another, but also this intensity going on in our own lives as we align with our right work, as we have relationships that we've had to work through, and we've had to use our willpower in new ways. And of course, that bumps right up against a lot of you in your human design, perhaps where you have an open will center, and you're often finding yourself in these invisible sort of competitions to try to keep up with the Joneses in the world, or to compare yourself to other people at your age and your field, and finding yourself, not where you should be. And then that becomes a problem where we, begin to overcommit ourselves to things, right? Like there's been this, feeling that I just need to do more. I need to focus more on the, big picture, when in reality, you were meant to focus here on the details. The devil was in the details, or in the more focused part of what it is you do. Sort of like, we have this big pie, and this big pie represents everything that you do in your life. Let's just say it represents everything you do in your business. And you can't eat the whole pie all at one time. Your mouth is not big enough. So we got to cut it into bite-sized pieces. And that's part of the process that we've been under this last year. And there's commitment in here. What are we committed to? And strength and courage to follow through with those things, right? And when it is that we're looking at what did we expand in our knowledge this year, it has been really about esoteric and occult sort of practices. And when I say occult, I don't mean the darker arts and things like that. The occult is really just the things that are hidden, right? The taboos, the secrets, the conspiracies, and we've had a lot of that, a lot of, secret things going on where we just sense there's something bigger going on beneath the surface. And there's more focus in this year. There has been on science and on research, discovering things in the dark, discovering things in deep space, and then advances in psychology and in the work that we do when we're doing the self-reflective dive and coming back with some of the belief systems and things that have been sort of, hidden from us and have been keeping us to, like a cap on your head, keeping you down. And we were also sort of, and I'm going to use this term, romanced by badass characters. Some people, right, got so romanced by characters out there that were, loud and, making themselves heard, that we've lost sight of what it is that we really value. We lost ourselves in the voices of people out there making a lot of noise. Jupiter in Scorpio has also brought us intimacy or dealing with intimacy and personal relationships. In fact, Scorpio is sort of the sign that would rather be alone than be in unhappy relationships. And in the idea of relationships was this idea of how do we combine resources, and how do we, bring if we're going to be in relationship, how do we bring to, your gifts, your talents, my gifts, my talents, and we merge them, because it's about merging. And literally everything to do with sex, money, power, death, crises. We've had crises after crises, all themes of Jupiter in Scorpio. So that's where we've been. So Jupiter in Sagittarius. Now, what can we look ahead to? Well, we often look ahead by beginning with looking behind. The planet Jupiter moves into Sagittarius November 8th. So just a little bit more than a week away, 2 weeks away, maybe. And I don't have November up yet. The last time it was in Sagittarius was November 23rd, 2006 to December 18th, 2007. So if you want to, just write those dates down so you can, do a mental sort of look back at what was going on in your life during those days. And what was the increase that was happening in your life? How are you growing in your life at that time? During the Jupiter in Sagittarius transit, we might expect an increase in cultural and spiritual ideals or awarenesses, expanding our connection to the higher mind. And in Sagittarius, in the natural zodiac, rules the 9th house, which is the house of expanded awareness, right? The higher self, expansion that takes us on a more universal viewpoint than a personal viewpoint. So when we take the planet that rules the sign of Sagittarius, who already has an expansive viewpoint, and we put it in the sign it rules of expansion and the expansion of spiritual awareness, you can imagine that we are all primed to grow a lot in the area of our higher mind, letting go of what hopefully is the lower mind's hold on ourselves in favor of looking up to, or inward to ourselves, to our higher powers. We can adopt a more global or big picture viewpoint during a Jupiter in Sagittarius. So where some of you might say our viewpoint as a world has been narrowed in because of the president, the president who's like reeling everything into, America first, and leaving us out of the conversations going on around the globe in terms of global warming and taxes and tariffs and humanitarian crises in countries and immigration issues, right? We've been sort of, over the last 2 years, sort of separated as a country from the mainstream of the globe. You can expect that we will probably move toward more of the other side of things, where we adopt a more global or big picture viewpoint. And that may be in this country, in the USA, as a result of some of the election results that, we see coming in next week. We also adopt a more faith, a higher faith, a trust in the universe, in our higher power. And this is a transit that deepens our philosophical or our religious beliefs. So you might also see more instances of zealotry out there, of people like the gentleman that just, killed all those people in a Jewish synagogue over the weekend, right? That comes out of an overzealous belief, a self-righteousness about what Jews meant to him, and taking action on the more negative things that, that zealotry meant for this man. And so do I think that we might have more issues like that? Well, as long as we have people in power that sort of support that kind of divisive, polarizing kind of rhetoric, yeah. But if we can move through this and start to see the bigger picture, how we all are alike and how we, can all come together, then we have a better opportunity to increase what comes naturally with Jupiter, which is optimism. Optimism in this case is about doing the right thing. Doing the right thing. What's right? Right? What's correct? Things will work out attitude, right? Everything is going to work out. That's an attitude we might adopt over this next year. That even though things don't look very rosy, that in the end, that things are going to work out. One of the things that we can focus on is moderation over overindulgence, or moderation versus overindulgence versus overly extravagant. Because there's a tendency with Jupiter in its natal sign, in the sign that it rules, to overdo things, right? Moderation doesn't come easy to Jupiter, and it doesn't come easy to Sagittarius either. So we're going to have to work hard to try to pull things, to try to make things proportional, right? To not allow that pendulum to swing so far over that we find ourselves in the complete opposite end of things, because that's not good either, right? We want to, come into the middle. During this time, some people who are very prominent in Sagittarius or who have Jupiter in Sagittarius could become know-it-alls, and they refuse to see the handwriting on the wall, right? We could be so overly engaged in what we think we see as optimism that we fail to see the handwriting on the wall, i.e., last time, 12 years ago, this was the setup to the Great Recession, right? Where things, the subprime mortgages, seemingly an endless bubble, banks, loaning and not, having anything to back them, corporations, runaway growth, and boom, the bubble bursts. And what happens? We get dived into another recession. So at the beginning of the recession, that Great Recession came with Jupiter at the end of Sagittarius. And its next move, of course, is into the sign of Capricorn. So look at the handwriting on the wall. We have a year full of the potential for overgrowth, overindulgence, extravagance, and followed by a year of contraction and constriction, as Jupiter, when it moves into Capricorn, is then in Saturn's territory. And that brings about, the course correction. So do we want to repeat another Great Recession? I don't think we want to do that, but I think, the course is pretty much there. You've already seen the stock market reacting a little bit volatilely. We've seen already chatter out there about the resurrection of subprime mortgages. We've also seen the interest rates starting to go up. So, there are already signs, rumblings out there, if you will, right? So moderation is the key. During a Jupiter and Sagittarius time, we can be confident, courageous, and these are things I think we want to adopt: confidence, courageous action, and taking calculated risks. Jupiter in Sagittarius prefers risk. So that's why I put the word calculated risk, right? Calculated risk. So that we know that in order to grow, we need this little bit of an element of caution, but I'm taking a calculated risk that I'm moving in the right direction. I'm going to invest in myself, or I'm going to invest in my business, but I'm not going to overdo it, right? I'm not going to take it to the nth degree. The time of Jupiter and Sagittarius can be a time when we so identify with our own opinions and our own beliefs and our own perceptions that we fail to see reason, right? So it is that opening for those people to come in that are cult leaders, that are again, we take it, to that idea of zealotry and that overly self-righteous kind of attitude. To grow and expand best, be confident, but cautious, right? To grow and expand best, be courageous, but cautious. And to grow and expand best, be willing to take calculated risks without being risky, right? That's the lesson of Jupiter in Sagittarius. Now, Jupiter in Sagittarius is also known as good fortune, but good fortune comes when we are generous, when we are tolerant, when we're inspired and inspirational, when we practice what we preach, when we have perspective, when we can see the bigger picture, and when we rise above pettiness and that tendency during Jupiter and Sagittarius to be self-righteous. It's a big ticket, right? It's a big ticket. Let's see what people are saying about this. Colleen says the Jupiter Sag transit in June of 07 was when I filed and then got divorced. Good morning, Viva. How are you? It's good to see you. Tina says I'm a double Scorpio. I live in the depths, right? And now you got to come up out of those depths. And okay, so no, you guys are quiet. The other comments are all ones I've read already. So you must be deeply contemplative of what's going on, right? Mimi says, yes, already feeling these energies, looking forward to setting in to concentrate on winter projects. Yeah, it's a good time for that. So sometimes we can get an idea of, you can look back during those 12 years of your own self, right? And see what was going on for you personally. But I also took a look, and this was kind of tedious, but I did it anyway. I went month by month through Wikipedia of the year of the year from the time that Jupiter was in Sagittarius last, month by month, to see like what was going on around the world. And it was kind of shocked at seeing some of the themes already in repeat mode. In October of 2006, North Korea claims to have conducted its first ever nuclear test. We've seen some repeats of that. In November of that year, Saddam Hussein was sentenced to death. In December of that year, the European Union expanded to include other countries. In January of 2007, Steve Jobs introduced the iPhone. The iPhone, think about the impact the iPhone has had on all of us. We're now what, iPhone XR? What, I'm XS? I don't remember. XS as in excesses? Excesses? The January 2007, the first female Speaker of the House was elected. So we see that women beginning to take on positions of power during that time. It happened to be Nancy Pelosi, and she turns out to be sort of a very divisive figure in and of herself, but that comes over time. At that time, it was new and extraordinary and a glimpse into the possible future. In February, the IPCC report concluded that climate change was likely to be human-caused 12 years ago. 12 years ago. And again, North Korea agrees to shut down its nuclear facilities in a first step toward denuclearization. That didn't last. In April, the French high-speed train reaches 574.8 kilometers per hour for those of you in countries that use kilometers. For us in the US, that's 357.2 miles per hour, breaking a speed record for a mass transit. And in June, the iPhone, again, the first smartphone, was actually released in the USA. The first smartphone in June of 2007. In July, Live Earth concerts were going on all around the planet to promote environmental awareness. So we're getting an idea of where are we going to be growing? Where can we look to some of the eye-opening expansion that's coming? In August, here's the beginning of the economic problems. The French bank BNP Paribas blocks withdrawals from 3 hedge funds that were heavily committed to the subprime mortgage. And so begins the 2007-2008 global financial crisis. So when you go back in time, it was it was literally at the time that Jupiter was coming out of retrograde, right? Coming out of its retrograde cycle, that the first sign of the global financial crisis came about. In September, What do we have? UN adopts a Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. So we include the UN adopts this idea that indigenous cultures have rights and that we cannot just go trampling all over their rights. Then there was also the Universal Forum of Cultures that opened in Monterrey, Mexico. And I have this little piece of paper. I wondered why I had this little piece of paper sitting on my desk, right? I cut this out to tell you what this Universal Forum of Cultures was. It was an international civil society event that took place in the city of Monterrey, Mexico, starting in December and starting in September and ending in December. The forum, as it is commonly referred to, is a global event which takes place every 4 years in a different city each time and seeks to reunite citizens from a varied range of cultures, languages, religions to foster intercultural dialogue and to promote global civil society empowerment. This massive event gathered an approximate 4 million visitors to Monterrey and was mostly free of charge. Interesting, right? And in November, a sort of repeat, but in a different country, the high-speed one from London to the Channel Tunnel opened, opening up from London to Paris, I believe, the idea of rail or high-speed transit. So we see a lot of different things, that were happening. I tried to pick things from all around the world, not just here in the U.S., that were showing us growth as a globe, right? As a global society. So 12 years ago. So from this point forward, then what we've seen is the backlash against that in some ways, don't you think? Right? The backlash against that, where people are like, but wait, we're not concerned with the bigger, wider world. We're only concerned with us here in the US. Or maybe other countries around the world also sort of adopting that same kind of attitude. And here what we get to see quite clearly is the pendulum swinging a little bit to that other direction, where we have to be included in how much more global conversation can you get when a president sends 5,200 troops to the border to save us from an influx of immigrants that are heading north from parts in Central America and Mexico? And I'm not advocating that we let these people into our country. That's not the point. But what we see here is that this is a global problem. This is something bigger than just the US, Mexico, Central America. This is a global problem. It happened also in Europe with people that were streaming out of Syria and out of Iraq and Iran. And this is a problem, the migration of people. Right? The migration of people as a result of the violence and terrorism and divisive things that are going on within those countries, policies of hate and not acceptance. So for a time, for this next 12 months, we get to see hope in that horizon, right? We get to see optimism that we can come together as a globe. And I want to tell you, I think we need more than just hope and optimism. I think we actually need concrete, sequential action taken in that realm, right? To reintroduce the United States into the global conversation and any other country that's pulled themselves away from the global conversation. It's ridiculous to think that you can live in a vacuum anymore, right? We could do that perhaps 50 years ago, right? We could perhaps do that 100 years ago, but we can't do that now. We are all interconnected in seconds with one another through these phones, through media, social medias. And so what happens in one country, in one part of the planet, is known in the other part of the planet almost instantaneously. As soon as someone tweets it, puts it on Facebook, calls a friend who's in another country and tells them this just happened here. So we live in a global society. The United States has to wake up and realize we are part of it, not separate from it. So how do we play in the sandbox and in a way that everybody wins? That's what Jupiter and Sagittarius is going to be bringing to us. How do we play? How do we play together nicely? Right? We can't be the kindergartner on the playground that takes away everybody's toys and hoards them for themselves and doesn't share and throws handful of sand in your face when you try to get them, right? You can't be that way. But, in a very grown up way, that's what we're doing. So we have to be able to change. And I think the time for that is coming. But a Jupiter transit is only 1 year long. And as you can see by some of those things that I read you, there have been reverses in that. And what I think we often see and that we don't appreciate so much is that we made big leaps forward and then we also go backwards. And then it's that dance of 2 steps forward and 1 step back, but you're still 1 step ahead. So at the end of the Jupiter and Sagittarius transit, what we want to see is that we've had some really great growth. We've also had maybe some losses, but we're still a step ahead and build from that, right? Build from that. Don't destroy everything and start over, right? Build from that. So it'll be interesting times to be sure. Good morning, Natasha. It's good to see you there. In that time frame, I listened to the universe and my guides and was brought to Hawaii and Doreen Virtue at that point. And 6 months later, her last personal mediumship course, I really dived into who I was meant to be. Awesome. Colleen says, Apple is introducing a new Air book, not as dramatic as iPhone. And for the 5th month in a row, housing market slows. 2018, very much repeating. Oh, yes, indeed. And OMG, we had made the decision to move to Bulgaria in October of 2006, moved in March of 2007. Can't believe it's taken me that long for that to dawn on me. So Anne is stunned into contemplative silence. Colleen, the Jupiter Sagittarius transit. Oh, okay. So we've already read that. So it's important for us. It's really important for us when we have these bigger planets that move into signs, and for us to be able to use the past as a way to see where we might be going in the future. Not as a way to repeat the past, because we don't want to repeat the past, right? If the past is always repeating itself, that's like Groundhog's Day, the movie, remember, where he keeps waking up every morning and it's the same thing. Everything happens the same. It has to dawn on us now that we're repeating some things, and that it's negative things that we're repeating. We're repeating negative things. Right. So what can we do with that? Well, we can really lean into more of the things that make us a global community and participate in conversations that grow that. Right. We are a part of the globe. We are a part of this nation as well, or whatever nation you're in, you're a part of it as well. So, but just because you're a part of the USA does not mean you're not part of the earth. Or just because you're, living in Bulgaria doesn't mean you're a part of Europe. And Europe is also a part of the globe. So we are learning about how to be both a citizen of our nation, of our communities, and a nation of the world, and maybe even at some point in the future, a citizen of the universe, because I know we're not alone. We can't be. So how do we, if we can't even be good stewards, good citizens of the earth, how could we possibly think that we would be admitted to the knowledge of other civilizations around the universe, because we can't even keep peace here, right? So I just think there's a lot riding on this next year, in particular because I've looked ahead and I see what goes on next December when Jupiter moves into Capricorn alongside Pluto, alongside Saturn. I believe Mars and Venus are also in Capricorn in December next year. So there's a lot going on in a sign that suddenly constricts after expansion. It's like somebody just let the air out of the balloon. And in fact, it's not even like they let the air out of the balloon where it just sucks away. No, they popped it and it went. That's what next December looks like if we're not careful. We have 12 months intervening. We have 13 months intervening. And what we do with that next 13 months is extraordinarily important. So be supportive of people that have an optimistic yet cautious, confident look ahead, right? Support that if that's what you want. And in your own world, participate in those things that expose you to new things, new cultures, new ideas. Be proactive, not sitting back and just waiting for things to come to you. So it'll be a completely different feel to the year. But again, because Jupiter often brings the challenges first, I fully expect that we're going to see November, December, and January of this, January of 2019, be a little bit challenging as we are first presented with the problems. And then how can we look to the solutions? That comes next. So, all right. How's everybody doing out there? Good, good, good. No other comments, any questions? How did everybody do yesterday with the conversation around conservatism? Did that open your mind somewhat? Did it surprise you to see that the word is being sort of used in its incorrect format in some quarters? It certainly opened my eyes. And I, of course, am only doing this to help open up everybody's eyes. If my eyes are opened, I'm hoping it opened your eyes. And in search of a new meaning, maybe even, fostering a potential new political definition of what it means to be conservative and not going with, what's been conservative, because that's been my problem with it all. It isn't, that I don't have beliefs in common. It's that whole idea of you want me to conform to your religious beliefs, and your religious beliefs are this narrow. And it includes that people can't be gay, and that there's no such thing as gay marriage, and that women can't have abortions, and that, on and on. That's the part that I reject. And that is the part that is where the juiciest conversation lies. Right. So anyway, let's see. What do people say? Yes, that was helpful. Opening minds is very important, even our own. Yes, indeed. And I'm willing to go there with mine. I hope you all are willing to go there with yours. I mean, I'm sure I still have my sacred cows somewhere. We all do. And I'm hoping no more of them come up to the surface in the meantime. I'm feeling self-reflection and contemplation fatigue. And I bet some of you are too. And I'm really just ready to play out big in the world. And I'm really sort of, fatigued by this whole idea of doing that deep dive. But the deep dive has been very useful. And it has been very important, I think, in the process. So let's enjoy the fruits of our deep dive, right? Let's enjoy the things that we've moved through and transformed or transmuted, transcended, and let's move on, right? Let's move into the new. Colleen says, yes, I liked the other definitions. I have a child born in 1996 and can see the other definitions in him and in myself. Yeah, it's just so. I heard something else this morning. I get news that pops up on my phone, and sometimes I read it, and other times I'm just looking at the headline. And there was a headline this morning, and I think I probably have already. No, here it is. Time magazine. This one shocked me. More than 90% of Generation Z is stressed out, and gun violence is partly to blame. And I didn't open this up, but I'm betting that Generation Z is what followed the millennials. And let's see if it tells us when they were born. People who are ages 15 to 21. So my granddaughter, I have a 15-year-old granddaughter, 15 to 21. So she's my only Generation Z. But even for those of us who are the grandparents or parents of that generation, we hear of classrooms being on lockdown or schools being in lockdown, of gun violence. And is it any wonder that generation is stressed? And how do they take that stress and move into the future? What do they do with that? Right? What do they do with that? I don't, that makes me think I'm going to have a conversation with my Mackenzie, and I'm going to talk to her about how does she feel about that? I want to know. Inquiring minds want to know. And it's headlines that make us wonder, because look at all the violence that generation has had. 15 to 21-year-olds probably have been touched in some way or another by gun violence in their schools, in the mall, in a grocery store, in a church. They either have been touched literally, or they have had family members touched by that, or someone they know. And, even here in this part of Washington, where I live, which is bucolic, rural, there was a shooting in our local mall a couple of years ago. A man walks into Macy's and shoots 5 women dead at the cosmetic counter because he was pissed off at his girlfriend who used to work at the cosmetic counter there. She doesn't even work there now, but he goes in and he shoots the place up. Talk about fatigue, right? That's stress. Every time I go into that store now to buy my mascara, because there it's the only place I can really get it, I feel it, right? There's no one that isn't touched by it, but these particular groups of kids, the 15 to 21-year-olds, they're the ones getting ready to follow up the millennials out there in the world. So I don't know. Maybe that stress imbues them with a tolerance. Um, um, Maybe they'll have the balls, the guts, the courage to do something about gun violence because they were the children of it. Where we right now, at least in this country, are really caught up in gun rights and all that. So I don't know. Anyway, just interesting to watch the headlines sometimes, not to dig into the news because it can be very depressing, but because it opens us up to see a little bit about what is it that these transits, the planets, as above, so below, what is it bringing us to? So anyway, Colleen says, I have a 2002 child and she's definitely claimed stress a lot for the future with politics. Yeah. Oh, Colleen, great. She says something I bet every one of you is feeling. All this reflection has left me confused. Yep. And that's not unbelievable because there's been a depth of things. Just don't succumb to the confusion. Realize that the confusion will clear, right, in its right time. The next time maybe you're faced with whatever it is that you just had to transmute or transform or transcend, and you realize, oh wow, I moved through this, right? I've come through this, and I'm on the shiny end of this now. So don't think that the confusion is a bad thing. Sometimes the confusion is exactly what you need, right? Because then you are not thinking any one particular way. So you're more open maybe in that confusion. And I do think that the confusion will settle down. All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for joining me this morning. I'm glad you spent this time here. And if you have any questions or comments that you want to make, you can certainly send them to me at my Living Astrology. I'm going to post it here because I haven't done that yet this week. Living Astrology 111 at gmail.com. There we go. So if you want to email, please do. And in the meantime, I wish you all a blessed day. Take care. Thank you so much. Mwah! Much love to you all. Bye for now.